Thanks everyone for being here. So I'm going to talk a little bit about my PhD work. So I just finished in last September, so still quite recent. I have a background in cinema communications and natural resource management from Concordia and University of Victoria. I also am the research coordinator for UNESCO Chair in Community-Based Research and Social Responsibility in Higher Education. So I'm involved in a number of international projects looking at community-university partnerships. So it's another part of where my interests lie. So I think I have too many slides. So I'm going to try and go quickly through this so we do have some time for questions. And I'd love to show one of the 4 participatory videos I did with the communities. They're each about 15 minutes long, but I'm hoping to show just 5 minutes just to kind of give you a little taste of it. So I'll talk really briefly about informal and organized recycling globally and the significance of that. Talk a little bit about the Participatory Sustainable Waste Management Project, or program, sorry, that my participatory video project is part of. I'll touch on the theory, PV methodology. I'll talk primarily about that, and then some of the major findings and theoretical contributions. So just a few pictures here. India, here in Vancouver, we also have a huge informal recycling community known as binners. This activity is common all over the world, particularly in areas with high unemployment, poverty, areas where there's a lot of waste and garbage. According to GAIAS, the Global Alliance for Incinerators Alternatives, about 1% of the population in developing countries are engaged in this kind of activity. It's an extremely important survival strategy. It's a huge safety net. I know I did lots of work here in Vancouver with the binning population. A lot of binners that were cut out of social assistance programs then started engaging in binning. They're incredibly marginalized, excluded population. They face extreme harassment, stigmatization, severe health risks. Kind of goes on and on. Their exclusion is quite visible. I work a lot with recycling cooperatives here in Vancouver as well. They're looking at organizing structures to mobilize the groups together, to build their capacity to work more formally with waste management programs. It's also a very important way of legitimizing the work that they're doing and bridging with government as well. So just United We Can is one here in Vancouver. There's also a new one called Les Valoristes starting in Montreal. So it's something that's becoming more and more common. So the Participatory Sustainable Waste Management Project is a community university partnership program funded by CETA, and it was 6 years long. Started in 2005, 2011. It was between UVic and USP, University of Sao Paulo. And we started in about 4 different municipalities, and over those 5 years grew to 8. So we were working with recycling cooperatives, up to 32 different co-ops, all varied in capacity. Some were very informal groups, some were associations, some were very organized cooperatives with lots of support from governments, particularly in Diadema, for example. So we worked to help strengthen the capacity of the co-ops to commercialize the materials together. Lots of capacity building in health and gender, added value for products. Public policy was also a huge part of our program, and empowerment and building the confidence and the organization of the recyclers. So just quickly here to show you some of the socio-environmental problems associated with the rationale of the project. This is the main Rio Pinheiros, runs through Sao Paulo. These are mostly PET bottles. I think it's a couple months of accumulation here. This is very common, illegal dumping, scavenging through the streets, sometimes also with families. You still see children, and still on open landfills as well, and some waste burning. So this is typically how material is collected and transported using different types of mostly hand mechanical carts. So it's extremely energy intensive, very difficult physically to be working in this way. Just to give you a little example of the municipalities in Brazil that have coleta seletiva, which is door-to-door collection services with primarily recycling cooperatives. So still very small percentage. As you can see here, over the last 20 years, door-to-door collection services has increased dramatically. Some significant policy legislation with catadores. There's about up to 1 million in Brazil that work in this profession, and out of that, 60,000 are organized in cooperatives. A few of the legislative support systems in place. In 2007, the catadores are now recognized as a legitimate profession, so this was a very big success for the catadores. And then also in Diadema, one of the municipalities I worked in, the government was then now paying the recyclers for the material they collect, which is still very uncommon and a major challenge for most cooperatives, that they don't actually get paid for the service they provide, they just get paid for the material they collect. So that was a big challenge for most co-ops. So I'll just dive into my particular project within that program. So really interested in looking at how communities, how recycling cooperatives can be more engaged in public policy decisions, how they can create more spaces for participatory public planning, very interested in looking at power imbalances and how we can disassemble those. I use participatory action research, which, how many of you have heard of participatory video? Just so okay, a few, that's good. So participatory video is embedded within the whole methodology, the spirit of participatory action research, so it's working with communities from the conception of the project. Really works to empower communities where communities have ownership over the project, ownership over the methodology, the results, and hopefully continuation of the legacy of the work. The work I do with UNESCO now, we're really looking a lot at knowledge democracy, moving away from a knowledge economy. So how can we create tools and structures that are really helping to support and value many different types of knowledges? And I think participatory video is a really good tool to look at how to represent multiple knowledges. So there's been a lot of use of PV. It's not something new. It's been around for 20, 30, 40 years. I think Fogo Island was one of the first uses of it in Newfoundland. But there hasn't been a lot of rigorous evaluation on its use as a tool in public policy planning. So that's kind of where I thought I could contribute. So I was looking at measuring the use of participatory video as a tool for individual, community, and organizational empowerment as a process and outcome of that. And then also looking at how useful it can be for a tool for informing public policy. There's a lot of words here. I know it's a little full. I just made this for a chapter. So just to kind of give you an idea of the process of video, if any of you have worked with video, it's very time consuming, especially when you're editing with 30 people. So it took me about a year to work with the groups. The video idea was conceived about a year before I started my PhD with one of the cooperatives called Copapires, who are having a lot of difficulty in their community with no support. And my supervisor, who I worked with, Yuta Gutberle, she worked with this cooperative using an action video tool to try and get some support from local government. It was successful, so we then decided to do a large participatory video project with all of the cooperatives involved. And so we applied for some funding. We got some private funding, some funding from IDRC. We then went there and did a week-long train the trainers workshop. So we did theme development, drawing, mapping, lots of focus groups, actually how to use video cameras. For the first time, many had never held a video camera before, how to do interviews, how to do script writing. So we did a very kind of comprehensive, long training. So that was kind of the pre-production. Then we did the field production. So we actually went out, because we were working with such geographically dispersed areas, they decided to create 4 small groups with lots of the co-ops in those groups. And then we made 4 documentaries. There was about over 100 hours filmed in total. So it was, you can imagine, a lot of organization to prepare all that footage. And then we spent about a year doing co-editing. So we did that in a number of ways. Here's a picture of the storyboard, for example. These were the 4 final videos, some of the production, and one of the co-ops there. So this is some of the timesheets we used to do the co-editing. Because I brought all the footage back to Canada, it was a lot of, well, I went back 3 times during that year to do all the research, to do all the editing, lots of Skype meetings, but then these timesheets were kind of the most useful part of co-editing with so many people over such a long period of time. So the co-ops, the representatives from the co-ops logged each clip and then highlighted which clips they wanted to be included. So it was a number of back and forth like this. We did a co-editing workshop as well, so we actually showed how to use the editing, how to upload footage, how to input sound and music and text. So there was a pretty comprehensive editing. And then here is like one of the feedback sessions we were doing. So once we had all the videos done and we were all happy with them, we wanted to use them as a tool. So then we said, well, how are we going to do this? So we did some more meetings, more discussion on using the videos now for public policy. So we decided to do a survey. So all of the survey and research instruments were done participatory with all of the groups that we were working with. We did 3 focus groups in 3 of the municipalities with different members of government. In Diadema, for example, where there was quite a lot of support, we met with the mayor. In others, we met with Secretary of Environment, Social Development, Engineering. We showed the videos in the focus group, and then the catadores were the ones interviewing the local government. These were all filmed, and then I did analysis of the focus groups. I also did in-depth interviews with the leaders of the co-ops to have the reflection of the process of what came out of the focus groups in terms of power, empowerment, and leadership and these things. A little bit of my theory, just to give you a little background for where I'm coming from. Of course, social economy, I'm very much interested in forms of cooperative and social enterprise development. Feminist theory, looking at power and where power lies in spaces of engagement, community and governments. Political ecology, looking at waste as a resource and commons. Participatory waste management approaches. And then very much embedded in community-based research, so how can we be doing research from very bottom-up approaches. So my work is very qualitative, very subjective. I found there was, well, the analysis was very much going back to the literature and then engaging a lot with the recyclers. So I pulled out a few quotes that I thought really captured the essence of the work that we were doing. For many, it really encouraged a lot of self-esteem and self-confidence, positive feelings. This is from Vilma, for example. I feel flattered, very happy. Sometimes I'm at a place and they show this DVD and I keep saying, I've filmed this part. That video there, we the collectors did it. And I learned a lot, and it's another motivation to be taking it to the population and saying that it was the collectors who filmed it. I would like to say that today I'm proud to be a catadora, very much so. Today I fend it with my heart. I learned to fight not only for the money, but to defend a work that is beautiful and the importance of our work to the world and to the future generations that will come. For others, new knowledge and leadership was something very important. They learned new skills that they had developed through this process. I'm not going to read all the quotes. In terms of organizational capacity building, it was quite significant for all the co-ops to be working together in this way to mobilize a collective voice and identity. It brought a lot of strength to their message. And even to this day, there's a lot of resistance right now going on in Brazil, but also the world against waste incineration. It's a major threat, and during this time, a lot of the co-ops were coming together, so that was also a big part of their message. Community empowerment. A lot of the groups were actually going out into their communities, speaking with their local residences and businesses, so it built a lot of education and awareness around who they are and what they're doing. Monica from Diadema explains the videos help to enable the community to feel stronger. In Vila Popular, this is in one of the areas where they have a very extensive door-to-door collection service. We looked back at the DVD and people said, gee, how cool that we did this. Then the group was very happy to be there and they felt stronger. And so all the groups felt stronger together. This is a picture of all of the participants here. And then in terms of looking at public policy, so we did a number of interviews with the government as well. Many of the government officials we were speaking to hadn't actually been to some of these cooperatives before. They hadn't actually seen the challenges or met with some of the recyclers. So it was almost like a new way of seeing. Really, you know, the whole picture is worth 1,000 words. Well, it's quite true in this way. So just, yeah, a really useful tool to show the real life situation. This is an interesting quote from Ricardo. This is from Diadema. I found it interesting because it shows the reality of those unfamiliar with Diadema and São Bernardo. It is interesting to draw people's attention. People say lixeiro, which is garbage man, stigmatizing the collectors, but I say I'm lixeiro. I'm the one who produces it. The catadores are environmental agents who collaborate. So really having this whole paradigm shift about recognizing the catadores as environmental agents. So it's an important shift in thinking. Recognize the importance of strengthening dialogue, that it's really a two-way process, a two-way negotiation. So it helped to stimulate some reflective discussions during the meetings. I'm going to keep going because I don't have much time. Also the importance, how much time? It's up. Okay. Is it like finished? Right now? Okay. Also recognizing the importance for integrated approaches to waste management. So it's not just looking at environmental, but social, economic as well. Of course, measuring the impacts are difficult. There are short and long-term impacts. I was just back in Brazil about a month ago. It's like, done. Not even, can I show the video?
Oh, sorry, I totally lost it.
Okay.
I lost half an hour here.
I know, I was like, that went really fast. Okay, I can calm down. So outcomes. Okay, I'm good. Some short, I'll go back here. Short and long-term outcomes, as I mentioned, it's very difficult to measure when you're working with policy. Of course, they take, sometimes very long time to see any impacts at all. A few that I think the video work helped contribute to. About a year after working, one of the cooperatives, Copa Pires and Ribeirão Pires, had very limited support by government. They didn't have a washroom facility, for example, for many years, truck, equipment. And about a year after the project, they started getting a lot more support from the government. Definitely not saying the videos were the only reason why that happened, but it was an impetus and a tool for better communication, building relationships with the government. Also the creation of a resource center in Diadema, where all of the cooperatives are now working together. This is something that happened within a year. So by the time I did my field work until I published was about 3 years. So I was able to see some long-term impacts of the help of the videos. Remember, the videos are embedded in a much larger participatory project, so there was many capacity building projects going on at the same time as the video work. So again, it's very hard to pinpoint exactly how the videos impacted, but I definitely feel it was a contributing factor. Some of the other governments in Ribeirão Pires, for example, are using the video to educate other departments. As I mentioned, working in inclusive waste management policies, you need to be looking at from very holistic approaches, very multidisciplinary. It's not just a social, but it's environmental, it's economic. So how departments can be working collaboratively is very important. Probably one of the biggest outcomes that I feel contributed from this project is that the catadores are still using video today for lots of different reasons. As I mentioned, the movement against waste incineration. There's lots of protests happening, especially in São Bernardo do Campo, where they're now, the proposal has gone through to do a waste incinerator plant, which has many negative impacts on the catadores, completely really eliminating them from the whole process of waste collection, among other environmental impacts of going that route. And then throughout the whole PSWM project, they did a 6-year evaluation of the project, and the participatory video was considered to be one of the most popular, the best for capacity building from the recyclers themselves. And I was just there, as I mentioned a month ago, meeting with the community, doing some feedback from the results of the work, and we're now still in discussions on the legacy of the videos. So I haven't actually put them up on the website yet, but we're putting them up. We're going to be doing some blogs. We want to do more international distribution of the videos and that. So there's probably more to come in terms of impact. And something I'm interested in looking at more now in my work here, working with Leila and in Africa, working on the water governance program. I'll be using participatory video with some communities in Accra and Cape Town. Looking more at critical participatory video, so more self-reflexivity and where power lies between researchers and subjects, and even within the cooperatives themselves. I know that was an area that I didn't really get to explore very much, I think, because I was doing such a broad geographical range of things happening. It would be interesting to see the power imbalances within communities using participatory video, because some people get excluded from that process. And so there's a lot of things critical to explore. As I mentioned, it's not a golden egg. Using participatory video, it's very difficult to go into a community and then have miraculous results. I think it needs to be used in combination with other processes. And then the genesis, where the participatory video projects are coming from, and how are they created, and are they driven from the community? And so those are all very important questions that we need to be asking in participatory projects. And then, the capacity needs to stay in the community. So really using that train the trainers approach is really important. Overall, the research reveals that PV is a very powerful tool for personal transformation, for leadership skills, for creating a unified voice for groups. And I'm also interested in exploring more of the idea of a knowledge democracy and how arts-based methods can contribute to spaces of more engagement and valuing alternative knowledge. Strong partnerships, incredibly important. Working with cooperatives, of course, you need the support from both sides. So participation from civil society, but also responsiveness from government. So interested in looking at those structures. And then education, really changing societal's idea of catadores as garbage, as useless, as homeless, to environmental stewards that are actually providing a really valuable service to environment, to society. So really having a big paradigm shift in the way society views this population. And of course, more supportive policies. Looking at better models of inclusive waste management involving community, building the capacity of cooperatives to then perform the services. They need to be supported to get to that level. As I mentioned, it's an impetus. It's the beginning and stimulating dialogue. It's insufficient for full policy changes, but I think it's can be an important tool. This is, I guess, maybe 2 years ago now in Sao Paulo. This is Peña. She's from one of our cooperatives in Mauá. And this is, as I mentioned, one of the protests for anti-incineration right now that's happening in Brazil. A few additional resources. This is we did the exact same sister project in Victoria. We were given some funding from IDRC, I mentioned, so we did the Train the Trainers workshop in Brazil, and we did the exact same workshop in Victoria with the local Benin community there. Very different projects, very different results, communities, everything. So I'm happy to talk about that another time. And while we did the workshop, I documented the entire process, and then we created a video on how to do participatory video for practitioners. So that's also on our website from the Community-Based Research Lab at UVic. And during that time, we went to do a small documentary. It's called Beyond Gramacho. It's filmed in Gramacho, which is now closed. It's was the largest landfill in South America, where there are about 50,000 people living around the landfill working in this way. So this is a very good document to show the working from the landfill all the way to doing participatory, inclusive, working with recycling cooperatives. So those are all on the website. And to thank some of my supporters and my supervisory committee, and of course the members of the PSWM project. And I'd love to now show, how much time do I have? Oh, okay. Wow, I was like, that was, yes, okay. So I'm going to show about 10 minutes of the participatory video. It's only in Portuguese, so I know some of you maybe speak Portuguese here, and I will try and do some translation as we watch. But I think the visuals are powerful, so, but I'll try and translate as we go here. This is also something I'm working on doing, is to translate. Okay. So this film was produced as a tool with this project for communicating with government, to show the capacity of them to provide door-to-door collection services. It's okay? I'll turn it down. How's that? So the video shows three particular themes: to recognize the capacity, some barriers, and then the need for government support. So this was shot entirely by the recyclers at their cooperatives. Recognizing the capacity of the catadores to do coleta seletiva. Here, this project's going to help a lot to to show people how to recycle materials. So using the video as a tool in the community, how important it is for the families of the recyclers. So for the residents to separate their materials effectively for better pickup. Saying where the material's coming from. It's going to help us in our work, this video, and for all the population, to show the reality of our work here. To use it as a tool for media, to show people that to have a conscience and the betterment of the environment. So what message would you like to show to your community? That this is a very serious work for us. It's very important. That this would help have a better recognition of the work they're doing. He's talking about how much material they're collecting. Talking about the waste that's now diverted from the landfill that they're recovering. She's saying discrimination is a big problem for catadores. This work contributes to the environment, to make the world a better place. Important for future generations. I'm going to stop because I want to have some time for questions. These will be available on the website, so you will be able to see it if you want to finish. They're about 15 minutes long each one, so, and the other ones are there. So that's it. If there's any questions. Yeah. Thanks.
I'd like to know, how do you, when you say that the effect is by the participatory video, how do you distinguish between the effect of the video and the effect of actually the particular project and what counts?
It's very difficult. As I mentioned, it was very hard to exactly pinpoint what outcomes were coming from the PV. But when I did the evaluation with the catadores, I was asking them specifically about the participatory video process. So I tried to, as much as possible, always have the evaluation questions related to the PV and not particularly the big, larger program, even though it's very difficult to distinguish that. I know the participatory project, it was years of them already working together in some ways, so there was a lot of trust built, there was a lot of mutual respect and all of these things. So I think maybe in a different scenario where you're mobilizing people just that don't have that kind of experience might be an easier way to evaluate more clearly the PV itself. So in this context, it was very difficult to do that, but I tried as much as possible to always ask specifically about the video as much as you can. So, but I recognize the limitations with that for sure. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah. Yeah, no, those are great questions. In terms of evaluating empowerment, anyone that knows much about the theory, it's incredibly difficult to measure. It's very subjective, dynamic. We did some other projects similar to looking at empowerment, and we were trying to map empowerment over the large research program. And of course, you can be very empowered one day and extremely disempowered the very next day. So very difficult to measure this. There was a lot of excitement when we did the project initially. Of course, working with governments, there was a lot of, yes, we're going to be doing this now, and still years later, there's still no remuneration. Some government support was very strong, and now it's completely not there at all in some of the areas because of government switchover, different leaders, so it's very vulnerable. The whole context, and the cooperatives are very vulnerable still in terms of policy supports. It's very difficult dealing with, having so much excitement for something, and then it's a struggle, I know lots of the communities, the participants we work with are such strong leaders, and I've seen their leadership change so much since the beginning of the project till the end, and now they're running meetings, whereas before they were very shy to speak at meetings, and now they're literally running the whole thing. So that to me shows a lot of capacity building, a lot of self-confidence, leadership development. Dealing with the disappointment in accountability from government, that's something that's very difficult. I don't know how to, I'm open to ways of looking at that. And your second question was looking more at how it could fit into the matrix system of decision making. I'm hoping to dive more deeply into this with my work here. I feel like I can really go a lot deeper, looking more at participatory public policy and more specifically at decisions and things. So I'm doing research now on how to build on that. So, yeah. Okay. Yeah, in the back. Mm-hmm.
So the question here just becomes, where is the option generation, right? And I can understand that through proposal incineration, you are trying to maintain a way of life, and certainly as part of convoys of cars that went and tried to stop the police from stopping a coal miner having something to do with a power station.
Mm-hmm.
Back of my mind, I mean, this is a horrible life for them to lead.
Mm-hmm.
Why is the option generation?
Yeah, that's also, I grappled with that a lot during my master's research. I worked in the downtown east side with United We Can, working with the local binners there, and that was always on my mind. I'm trying to highlight the importance of this work, but at the same time, I struggle so much with the fact that I'm defending a job that allows people to dive into dumpsters and get hurt. So it's not so much, I think, for me validating the work, but creating space to build opportunity in different, more, not even decent, but like great employment for these people. I think that's a problem across the world in terms of having good employment in general. These people are working kind of at the bottom end of the line in many ways, and I think I've seen some models, such as in the downtown east side now, where the binners are working collaboratively with the Downtown Business Association, which are much more dignified ways of working. They have now proper equipment and suits. They're sponsored, so they have more validation. They actually have binning cards. They have an association. Thanks. So I think there are ways to make a better way of life out of doing this work. But I think it's very bad right now, the way it is happening. And there needs to be a lot of support. So, yeah. Yeah? Yeah.
I have one question, one comment. My first question is, what were the Vancouver videos from? My friend, and the comment is whether you have better relation with the policy
Yeah. The national, yeah.
in which by now 100% of the cities should have micro
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I think whenever these policies put on practice, maybe the opportunities for better for these professionals
Yeah. No, for the first question, so the videos were shown at quite a few different venues around Sao Paulo and in the ABC region. Lots of two cooperatives that weren't actually involved in the project. I was working with, I forget the name, they're a capacity building NGO, and they were doing work with cooperatives. I was accompanying them, going to some of the co-ops that were still very marginalized, not involved in our project at all, and showing the videos to show some good models from Diadema. Also some other government outlets where there were public forums in Sao Paulo. We showed the videos there. I've showed it at lots of universities around Canada and internationally as well. And now we're working on doing a blog from my website and the project website to do more distribution. But they've been shown at festivals, Lixão et Cidadania, also the International Waste Pickers movement. So lots of different varied places. In terms of the second question on the national policy of waste management, yes, I think it's very good. I remember when that was actually going into place. And during that time, the part of the legislation actually encouraged municipalities to be working directly with recycling cooperatives. And that was very, very clear in there. And then they made an amendment about a couple weeks after they had put that in there, saying that it's just recommended, not mandatory. So we were very excited, and then we were all very disempowered after that. But And then also there was another amendment saying that they could, other technologies. So there's a lot of political stuff going on with waste incineration and that. But I think in general, you can see in the chart, it's moving dramatically in that direction. So, yeah. Yeah.
First, just congratulations on your work. It's very inspiring.
Thanks.
Really cool project together.
Thank you.
A lot of the themes that you discussed are very similar to issues that are being discussed here in visual planning. I'm just kind of too bad I don't see anyone from I'd encourage you anytime you get to go there.
Yeah.
A lot of work being done on these themes.
Yeah, Leonie? Is it? Yes, I just looked at her website like yesterday, so I'm going to connect with her, definitely, yeah. Oh, okay. Great. Yeah, I'm interested in looking into that.
My question was, what sort of advice would you have for PhD students or master's students on the versus full-time research and or
I definitely encourage it. I guess time takes always a bit longer to do the video work, so I would think about that when you're planning the project. And then you really need interest from the community to want to be doing that kind of work. So if there was some pre-planning that you could maybe do some visits with the community just to see the interest level. I'm doing that right now with the communities in Africa, thinking more working with youth. So I'm connecting with some youth organizations to see if that was something that they're even interested in doing, because it's a lot of work, but I think the products are so so beneficial to be using. The thing about video is you can use it so many different ways over such a long period of time. So it's a very dynamic tool. So yeah, but I can talk to you more about that. Oh yeah.
question on editing process.
Yeah.
So I understand that, well, I understood that you shot is also involved in editing.
Yep. Yep.
I was wondering if you could comment on any specific dynamics that you encountered when you were editing how much besides
Yes. And this is something when I wrote, I was like, I wish I had done that. I wish I had done more evaluation of that process, because that was something, I would think I was so concerned with the actual power imbalances with government. And I mentioned that at the beginning, that I'd like to look more at the power within the communities, because through observation, I did see that go on, but I had no way of measuring it except for my own observations of doing that. It was a process. I mean, we tried to make the process as participatory as possible, of course, and the groups all assigned roles. So that was one way of doing it. So ideally, each person would have a chance to use the video camera to act or interview somebody, so there was that collaboration when they were doing their script writing and storyboard. But of course, there's going to be one dominant person in that focus group that's going to be taking control, or someone that's more interested in filming or directing than others, and maybe someone who's shyer will stand away too much. So there's all of this going on too, and I observed that, but I didn't actually do any of the measurements of that particular side of it. So, but I find it very fascinating. So, yeah, yeah.
One final question.
Okay. Well, that's a very big debate within the literature on informal to formal. There's a huge debate on whether, you know, some groups want to be informal. You know, I spoke with a lot of, here in Vancouver, Binners don't want to be organized. It's very different than in Brazil, where in Brazil I think there's more of a, I don't know, a spirit of collaboration or organization to work together. There's more, I don't know, a desire to be formalized, whereas here it's completely the opposite. And I was meeting with CRD in Victoria to try and look at ways that they could be supporting Binners cooperatives in Victoria. And they weren't interested at all. They were saying, you know, they don't have a social mandate. This is engineering services. Vancouver was a little bit more progressive when I was speaking with them, and they actually have some interesting models, but the Binners themselves do not want to be integrated. They like the autonomy, they like the lifestyle. So yeah, there's a lot of debate on that and whether they're going to lose a lot of other aspects of their livelihood that they appreciate. So I think it can be, you know, both ways. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Thanks. No, that's okay.